This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our weekly board chair check-in and update meeting. My name is Will Marie Newton, and I will be moderating this call. I ask that you please mute yourselves in order to avoid background noise while the presenters are speaking. However, you can unmute yourself if you would like to ask a question, or you can type it into the chat box. If you are calling in from your cell phone, please take a moment to physically mute your cell phone, as I'm unable to mute you from my computer unless I mute all participants. Just as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be archived on CABE's website under Services. Thank you.
Thanks, Marie. Well, good morning, everybody. Another week. There is not a lot to update you on, except I hope you all got the email we sent out yesterday about CERC handling the PPE for our districts. That doesn't mean you can't buy your PPE from individual businesses or go through your municipalities, but now we do know that at least CERC is going to try to coordinate it so we don't look like the federal government. You know, what happened there with PPE was everybody was competing against everybody else, but CERC is going to help coordinate it, and I give thanks to CERC. We've been asking this for a while, and I'm glad they're finally doing it. The other thing you should know is that, as far as I know, all the regional advisory teams have stopped meeting. My understanding from the commissioner yesterday was this is temporary. When they're needed again to give more input, they will be resurrected and have a chance to speak. In addition, the subcommittee I'm on for Reopening Connecticut, the Education Subcommittee, is also not meeting. We had a meeting yesterday, and we will meet again eventually, but probably not until next week at the earliest. What the commissioner wanted us to stress is that this is a very uncertain time. They sort of feel in the governor's office, as well as with SDE, that things are happening so fast that as soon as they put something out, something else changes in the medical guidelines, changes in other things have affected them. But what they did say to us yesterday is that in the next couple of weeks, you'll get more information on reopening and what is to be expected. You should know that next week on this call at 11 o'clock, we are going to have the commissioner and his cabinet. They graciously agreed to talk to us about what's going on. What we understand on the reopening plan that I just mentioned is that it's with the governor's office, but there are also other groups looking at it, including the medical, the health and safety committee, the guidelines committee. But we'll have a chance to ask more of the commissioner next week. You should know that tomorrow we're doing a webinar. Dr. Martha Brackeen Harris is going to answer questions. She's CABE's consultant on equity issues, and it's called, this is what we named the discussion, Dear School Boards, your students and staff of color are not okay. What can school boards and superintendents do? And I think before we get to the summer, and before we get to reopening, and before this very important crest of social interest in this subject has come, and maybe it won't be on the absolute front burner for a while. It's a good time for school boards to think about what they can do in their districts to help both staff and students of color who are going through some rough times. As we know, COVID has attacked the communities of color actually more or a greater percent than It has in other areas, and we expect a very good discussion. I'll ask some questions. They are not easy questions, but I have shared them with Dr. Brackeen Harris, and I think you'll find tomorrow very interesting. So you should have gotten emails on that. They came out from Will Marie. What we plan to do now is spend about a half an hour. We're going to talk about facilities. I'm going to introduce the panelists who we are very glad could make it today. We're going to talk about facilities and some of the logistics about cleaning up our buildings. And I thank Becca Adams for helping us get this together. Here is a brief discussion of the two gentlemen we've asked to talk. Keith Watkins is the Assistant Director of Facilities for the City School District in New Rochelle, New York. As you may know, that's a city right over the border from Connecticut, pretty much. It's a district with 11,000 students and 2,000 employees. I'm just kind of laughing because as soon as we start these, either the lawnmower guys will show up. They're apparently cleaning the streets. I've never actually seen that done in Glastonbury before, but that's what's going on. So let me close my window. Hopefully that's a lot better, and I'll mute my cell phone after my computer after we start talking. So that's Keith. He's Assistant Director of Facilities for New Rochelle. Josh Peach, who is also with us, works for a company called SchoolDude, also known as Dude Solutions, a company that provides facilities management support for school districts throughout the country. And they're going to talk for a little while. I'll ask a couple of questions, and then I hope that the attendees will feel free to ask questions too. So the first thing I'd ask is that what we're hearing, I hear it from Bristol, I hear it from lots of other places, is that the biggest issue they're facing is transportation. It's a real difficult issue as we try to do social distancing. And the other is classroom social distancing. How do you fit a whole class in a classroom when you social distance? So I'd ask at this point for Joshua and Keith to speak up, and let's talk about transportation and classrooms to begin our discussion.
Maybe Keith and Josh, you could do the brief intros, that just very brief, that you were going to do. That'll help lead us into that topic.
All right. Hi, everyone. Keith Watkins. 30 years experience in 6 different New York State public schools. I'm a certified director of facilities. There's only 44 of us in the whole state of New York. I am one of them, active. I'm the current president.
Ooh.
Someone's got their phone and computer on. Current president of the National School Plant Management Association, which encompasses 22 states. I'm the past president of the New York State Facilities Association, which is 600 plus schools, 800 members. I'm the plant manager of the year 2020. I've been here in New Rochelle for 3 years. I was recruited from the director of facilities planning at State Education Department of New York, who took a position down here. So I'm the assistant, but I've been the director for 15 years beyond that. So my emphasis is cleaning for health, indoor air quality, task management, and anything really to do with facilities management.
And I'm Josh, and I haven't worn pants that require a belt in 91 days. Jokes aside, I'm the Dude Solutions evangelist. I've been working with Dude Solutions for 16 years. Actually, started in 1997 with a previous company. Work with most of the districts that have been mentioned. We provide operation software. So when we're going to talk about space management, things like that, that's a lot of what our software does to help you guys better forecast budget and be prepared for things like what we're going through. One thing before we start, And I'm going to send you guys I'll send a couple of links because it depends on if it's substance abuse or if it's a natural disaster. But there's something known as the 6 phases of disaster. And if you're not familiar with it, you really want to make sure that you are, because what we're in right now is the 5th phase, which explains a lot. It's known as the disillusionment phase or the crash phase. This is the time in which exhaustion, fatigue, withdrawal, anger, anxiety, resistance, and we find fault in others and we lash out. So this is all natural, what we're all going through. It's just something we need to work through to get to phase 6, which is the reconstruction phase. So hopefully we can help you with that and getting closer to it in the next 30 minutes.
Joshua,
Yes.
before you guys get started, I'm going to mute everyone so we reduce the background noise,
Okay.
and then you guys can continue. Okay, you can continue.
Okay. Well, if we might as well we can get right into the questions if you want us to read them, or if you want to read them to us in the order that you want, or.
Well, it really doesn't matter. I just like to
Okay.
get into transportation and classrooms, and then we'll
Okay.
go to what do you do in the hallways, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, we'll start with transportation, which is number 1. I'll read it, Keith. You can start, and I'll piggyback. What are your suggestions for safely handling transportation in terms of unloading and loading students at schools? How will you handle foot traffic flow to and from the buses and into the hallways, particularly if buses bus runs are staggered?
No, I don't know. I think I was muted for the beginning. This is my first district where we're not officially in charge of transportation. We contract this service out, but we are in talks with the bus company and asking questions that I can't say that I'm happy with the eagerness of them getting answers to us, but we all have a lot of questions that we're not getting guidance on. The things that we're putting together as subcommittees throughout our district, which facilities is kind of on all subcommittees because we overlap in some facet. They're talking about, Rochelle in particular, we have kids who ride the B line. We have kids who ride the subway. I mean, we have all things interacting as far as transportation. Some of the things I'm hearing is social distancing marking at bus stops. First on goes to the back. You empty last on goes first. And again, these are all questions that nobody has answers to, because how are you going to take a bus that once held 66 students and now try to cut that minimally in half? Unless you have altered bus schedules. And again, these are all, I have a couple links I can share as well, basically that say, schools can't function with the recommended mandates. There's no way they can fiscally do it. It's just a dumbfounded. So I can share those links as well. Keep the faith, keep moving forward. And as guidance, I would say keep a short list of priorities. And as guidance is shared, then that will help adjust your focus of priorities of what you're trying to do. That's what we're doing. But as far as transportation, I have an email that I'll share later also. It's another large district next to us that got some feedback from the bus company they're using. It's really dumbfounded, some of the responses they're giving about what they're doing for the buses. So again, we don't have guidance, so we don't know which direction to go in.
You're muted, Josh.
How do I unmute? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep. Depending on which report you read, it's anywhere between 60 and 70% are of school districts are like Keith, which is outsourced services. Across the board, there's been a lot of tough communication with school bus companies. Is that?
Yeah, transportation is really is a tough one.
It's a tough one. The big thing on that transportation, as far as loading and unloading, which a lot of folks are just really starting to get into, is signage. Making sure that you have a signage partner, and they're busy. I'll send you one that's up here in Massachusetts. It's been in business for 92 years. Their entire business has shifted to essentially social distancing signage, specifically with schools. And you want to find someone that knows the rules and regulations, that isn't just putting up tape and stickers, but is literally posting things for people that they can't miss it. I mean, think about if you walk into the post office. I'm not sure if you've noticed the signs in the post office, but there's supposed to be no more than 2 people in line at the post office. There's a big sign at the door, but it doesn't stick out. It's black and white and printed in most post offices. there's never two people in there. They're just completely bypassing, not paying attention. They're lucky if they pay attention to the tape. So visible signage that is so self-explanatory, it's idiot-proof, as well as directionals, arrows in which direction folks are going to need to walk in. It's number 2, which is what physical changes can districts make to facilitate social distancing in classrooms and hallways?
So in New York State, we're partner of the SFA, School Facilities. So we partner with NICOS. If any of you guys know Robert Reedy in the past and Michael Borges, they're our collaborative partners. We talk a lot. For schools, if masks are going to be mandatory, the CDC is saying if a mask is worn, social distancing can be, the restrictions can be lessened. So we're looking at, I just got a lot of samples in this past week. I also have, we're looking at, here you go. You can be the first to see me in this. So here I am now behind a shield. These are $4 a pop. So kids who need to see teachers' lips to learn better now can see their lips with no mask. We're going to assign these to teachers. They can take them off. They can clean them themselves. No one wants to wear someone else's mask. So besides that, other masks that we're using for a district the size of New Rochelle, for us to provide 1 mask per day for every staff and every student, it's going to be a $1.47 million increase in our budget for masks alone. As far as I think the question was traffic flow, our schools are going to end up looking a lot like your supermarkets. You're going to have hallways that are one way. You're going to have stairwells that are one way. It's going to be redirectional. You're going to have a craziness with your wayfinding. We are looking at staggered shifts where kids would go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 week. Next week they go Tuesday, Thursday. These are all things that are unknown because direction hasn't been given. We have a lot of committees talking about it, and we're projecting within the next few weeks a lot of these questions will have real answers instead of 4 different scenarios that we've been charged with creating.
Yeah, and the distancing in classrooms, Massachusetts, I saw in the chat someone couldn't get into the Boston Globe, but before COVID, it was 35 square feet per student that was required. Now it's gone up to 42 square feet, and you can't have more than 10 students in a classroom, no matter how large the classroom is. So there's that's going to kind of social distance itself, unless people all huddle together in these spaces. And like Keith said, right now schools are, how do we do it? And staggering, part virtual, part on premise. There's a million different scenarios going through, and it's going to come down to, at the end of the day, a lot of it's going to come down to affordability and feasibility. But God knows we don't want our parents being the teachers anymore because they've had to do it for 3 months, and I think they all want to quit. But the requirements that are being set forth are going to be they're going to be a challenge for everybody. So it's the best thing for you to do is do exactly what you're all doing, which is get on as many of these meetings, consume as much specific content to what's related, and try to bring some deliverables for consideration.
I'm looking at an open spreadsheet right now that my business official shared with me, and there's 3 scenarios. Governor opens business as usual. Scenario 2, we do not open and continue distance learning. Scenario 3, we open and then we close quickly due to positive cases. So what we've got is multiple people putting in issues, solutions, and then we're giving that to the Board of Education, superintendent, and doctors who are on a certain committee. Yeah. So that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, my son's school right now is a private school, and they're planning to open in August. And their calendaring system has them prepared to close for the month of November. And is already putting that for the second wave. I mean, I think one of the things that we're going to see in the next 2 to 3 weeks that you guys all need to be prepared for, that we all need to be prepared for, is a potential spike. We're already seeing it in Arizona, Florida, Texas, and other places that have let up restrictions. I think that all of the protests and riots and everything that's been going on over the last 2 weeks, we're potentially going to see a spike in those areas and other areas where people are traveling to. So that could definitely be an effective change to what the plan is. That could be a don't open in the fall, or there could not be a spike and people could say it's not that bad and we're going to open up business as usual. So, one of the big things is, to realize that some of the stuff you have to put a pause on because it's a lot of knee jerk, a lot of scenario based stuff. I don't know if Connecticut's focusing on requirements for temperature taking, entry of schools, or a number of times. Massachusetts was initially going to institute a 4-time check daily of temperature. That was last Tuesday or Wednesday that was coming out to the schools. One of the schools that I work with, a private school, is going to buy 4 devices that you have at the entry of the school that's basically a station that you walk up to and takes your temperature, touchless temperature taking at $3,900 a pop. And they were going to sign off on it. And I told them, just hit the pause. To spend $99 4 times and buy 4, touchless, just regular thermometers. Have them on hand, because you put them to use, put them in the nurse's station or what have you. But that's something that's probably not going to stick, because there's too many variables about temperature taking that would cause chaos for COVID possibility. So sure enough, the state changed all their policies and best practices and requirements, and that's no longer a requirement 5 days later. So everything that comes out, you definitely want to take it serious. Definitely look at it, work with your team to develop a plan to attack it. But you definitely want to pull back and wait just a little bit for the reality of what it might look like and what it'll be.
Yeah. And I think I agree with Josh's stance, but I also, doing this 30 years, I have a little different approach too. Doing something is better than doing nothing, even if it potentially can be wrong. Doing nothing right now is really not an option, and it shouldn't be an option. Talking about temperature checks, here's my daily COVID-19 pass. We have 12 locations. We have a $106 million capital project going on right now. Anyone accessing our facilities has to go to a screening station with a school nurse where they get their temperature taken, they get asked some questions, and they get a pass every day. So every day I get one of these just to get into my own office. So talking about the thermal imaging that Josh was just talking about, I've already got 6 different quotes for 6 different platforms for thermal imaging and what that wellness check will look like if someone coming in has an elevated body temperature. All things that we're ready to move on and implement. We're just waiting to make the best decision for our district. Hence Josh's point about hitting the pause button and not going with that first silver bullet logic that comes your way.
Mm-hmm. I think just so that I want to be fair for everybody's time. If I'm correct, we got about 6 minutes. We started about a minute after. I'm gonna kind of bulk up these questions, if that's all right. And then if there's questions, you can put them in the chat link, or we can go longer, or what have you. But let's tackle if there's a cleaning process or protocol, and what would be the best right now solution to consider for treating space. Most effective at fighting COVID, if you will, and then we'll just close up with the PPE and HVAC.
Yeah, what I'll do is I will send an email with some things that we've done in New Rochelle, and you guys can look at it later just for a sample of time. First thing out of the gate is you absolutely have to make sure that your buildings are being cleaned with a product on the EPA list N. If you don't have it, you need to find it and get it. The other piece is electrostatic sprayers are the new norm. For almost 2 years, we've had those handheld units and backpacks in place here for almost 2 years. We've had them in place long before the pandemic broke. We were a little more proactive. We assigned a handheld unit to each one of my 92 second shift full-time staff. And then we have 6 backpacks that we share throughout the district for larger spaces and application of our product. Got to be real careful that the product that you're using is approved to be sprayed in the measure that you're doing it. So it's just a logistics. Your facilities person should be able to facilitate that as well. So cleaning, don't overlook cleaning with microfiber technology. Your initial cleaning is as important, if not more important, than the disinfectant product you're using. Your disinfectant product, if it's just sprayed holistically, not good to do anyways. And you're not as effective as you think you are because you haven't cleaned first. No silver bullet application. We've implemented 4 or 5 strategies. We have the electrostatic sprayers. We're cleaning and disinfecting daily. We have applied an antimicrobial coating district-wide on all 1.6 million square feet. It has a kill claim for 90 days as long as you continue to do your daily cleaning. We have a product that's called BioProtect. I'll have this in an email. I'm not going to get too crazy with you right now. A product called Purity Window Cleaner. It's made out of the ninth most popular mineral in the world, and it leaves a film on the windows. And as sun rays come through it, it creates a photocatalytic process where all of your exterior glass now become mini air scrubbers, improving your indoor air quality. So a lot of great technology out there. Not that costly, water-based, non-toxic. Don't overthink it. Get a good cleaning process in place using an EPN-less disinfectant. Look for application measures. Budgets, as we know, are going to be cut minimally by 20% in the years to come here. So you're looking at equipment versus labor, and to make sure that you're training and you're communicating with your staff, because the last thing you want to do is create a false sense of safe environment. We want to make sure that we are creating the best, cleanest, and safest environment so that when our students and staff do return, they feel comfortable and have a peace of mind.
That's great. I'm going to actually track back on one of the chats. There was a question I'm just going to address. It says many schools are straight hallways. There is no real way to make them one way. The hallways probably got a minimum width, and the easiest and most straightforward way is to make it like a road. Put a line right down the middle and put arrows each way, and you'll be amazed at how much of a difference. If you've ever been to Alaska and you go to an airport, they put a yellow tape 2 feet behind the baggage claim all the way around. Nobody ever crosses that line, but at any airport in the United States else that doesn't have a tape line, everybody's fighting to get their bag that isn't coming out. So making it almost look like a roadway, that one hallway, that could make a difference as a suggestion. Putting arrows and making directionals, they'll start to walk in the direction that they're supposed to. For the sake of time, this is an important one. Districts are concerned about buying PPE now at great expense and then not needing them in the fall. How are you handling that? Realistically, you're going to need PPE in the fall. There's not going to be an avoiding it. How much PPE you're going to need is completely hinged on, when a vaccine comes out in a period of time. Everything that I'm reading and seeing and people that I'm talking to that are much smarter than me are feeling like this is going to be a vaccination plus 6 months, that we're going to be in this sense of masks and PPE and social distancing and all of these things. So we do have a period of time. I wouldn't hold back purchasing at least the minimum allocation that you can, because it is still hard to find. There's on the news this morning, they said it's a lot more accessible than it was 90 days ago, but it's not a lot more accessible than it was 90 days ago compared to a year ago. So you definitely want to make sure that you have enough planning for a fall opening, and it'll get put to use as far as that goes. I can't see where it wouldn't.
The email that I'll share, by all means, you'll have my email. Feel free to reach out. I have got 4 business partners. I think the word vendor is too impersonal, but I've got 4 business partners right now that I can get PPE in any amounts. I received 250,000 masks yesterday. I ordered them 3 days ago. Just let me know.
Yeah, I would say absolutely work with your facility directors and making sure that they're aligned with partners and that they have plans and set in place and timelines, and see where they fall in the fold. There's smaller schools that you're not going to have. Keith's got great buying power. I mean, Keith has an incredible situation that many schools don't, where he has accessibility. He has great partnerships with companies that can get resources quickly. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that those vendors that you do consider partners, that temperature scan company, there were a document storage company 90 days ago. They shifted their company to be able to sell something to stay in business, which I applaud and I think is great. But at the end of the day, when things turn around, they're going to go back to being a document storage company, because that's what they were for 27 years. So you want to make sure that the people that you're talking to and that you're working with, and at all cases, hopefully they're people that are going to be in education, and they're going to be focused on keeping clean schools, healthy schools, and working with you through beyond the COVID pandemic, and that better relationships are built for you guys. So I think we're right on our time out here. I'll stay on through the call if you'd like. If you have other questions in the chat and you have some time that frees up at the end of 30 minutes. I hope that your meeting's not 30 days. Although it's going to feel like it. If you have any questions, I'll make sure you have all my direct contact information. Keith's put his in the chat, and I'll get the 6 phases of disaster. And at any point in time, doesn't need to be Dude Solutions software related. I'm happy to help share knowledge that I might have, or knowledgeable people that I know I have,
Can
to
I
help you guys.
Can I ask something, Josh? And
Yeah.
you're talking to mostly school board members,
Yep.
school board chairs, same as presidents in New York. When they go back to their superintendent or their facilities manager, if they happen to talk to them, what is the one thing at this point that you would advise them to talk about to make sure they're doing right?
For me personally, I was just so I know what you folks. I was a school board member for almost 5 years myself. I would say to what I continually do with my business official and my superintendent is, this is what we're doing. These are the levels of defense that we're implementing. So if anyone wants to know what the new school environment is going to look like when and if we return, this is what we've done. So to give a peace of mind and for them to really understand. So the same email I'm going to share with you, you look at the information, you look at the quick links that I'm going to send you, and then you'll have a great basis to say, hey, we spoke with Josh, we spoke with Keith, we've already spoke with Connecticut Superintendents of Buildings and Grounds Association. We've already had this talk with them. I've done this with 4 other states as well. It's not not one thing is going to fit all. So you have to work on that plan for your district based on level of effectiveness and what your budget will allow and what you want to communicate to your student, staff, and community that when you return, this is what we're going to do and this is what the new environment's going to look like.
Great.
Yeah, and I would just piggyback on that and just say that, you know, building a if you don't, I'm sure you all have great relationships with the superintendent, business official, and facility director, but I would absolutely say making sure that the lines of communication are open and developing plans, effective plans that can be acted on, that can be pivoted and shifted. I would strongly suggest, if you're a book reader, to read Afterburner Inc.'s Flawless Execution, which is about fighter pilots and what they go through on a mission, having multiple different results at the end of whatever the plan is. So the plan is to get back to school as quickly as possible. Here are different scenarios, like Keith says. How do we effectively work through those plans, and how do we work together through those plans? And then what do we have to do to make sure that we have the funding for those plans? And what does that look like? Which that's the biggest challenge that I think all of you will agree with, is that's the 5,000-pound elephant in the room. Is we can talk about all this stuff, but money's got to come from somewhere, and there's no more blood in the rock. So that's the biggest thing I would say, is that this can be the greatest chance of synergy and cohesiveness for everybody to work together for a positive result, or it can be the most challenging time where we're stuck in disillusionment for another lifetime. I hope we get out of this a lot sooner than later, because I like wearing pants with belts. So
my superintendent has already put out 2 different community-wide email information that talk about what we've done, and it's already decided to give some insight of what the new school environment will look like. And we have our own email address for our facilities department, so they can then send an email to our facilities department and get some of their questions answered. So, you know, when somebody's dropping off their student and they're coming through that secure single point of entry that we've hardened for attack resistant this, now it's going to have some information that says, you know, these windows are treated with a purity product. You know, when they walk in and sign their student in, they're going to see a sticker on the floor that says these floors are treated with microband technology. When they go to our restroom, they're going to see a sticker on the mirror that says these mirrors treated with an antimicrobial. So you've got to put yourself in a position that you want to be able to communicate what you're doing in many different levels, email, phone call. But if I'm a visitor and I'm coming to your school, as I walk through the building, I'm only allowed certain steps of access, mostly to the security guard, maybe to the main office, maybe to the nurse. So I have to envision what my trip to your school is going to look like, and I should be able to have means of communication that I'm receiving without possibly even having to ask the physical questions. I should be able to see that the school environment is safe due to the new protocols and what the new environment looks like. Very key.
And I'm going to wrap up. I'll make sure that Keith doesn't talk after this. The last thing I'll tell you is, beyond superintendent, business official, facility director, it's community. One of the things that I'm seeing lacking, sadly, social media is crushing all of this. Social media has devastated the COVID controversies, questions, conspiracy theories. everything that's gone on the last couple of weeks, and building diversity and inclusion and everywhere, which is a firm belief that I think everybody on this call believes we should be doing more of. Reaching out to the community, getting more social engagement, maybe having community members that are social media liaisons representing your district and making you aware of what's going on, because perception becomes reality. Right now, you're looking at 1 in 5 teachers is potentially not going to come back in the fall. Potentially even more students are not going to come back in the fall, so you won't need to worry about filling these classrooms, all based on social media perceptions and discussions. So I would say community engagement is more important than ever on every aspect, and every person, doing some heavy lifting with that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, both Keith and Josh. Thank you very much. I see some people clapping out there.
Thank you.
If you have further questions, board chairs, just send them to me. I'll send them to Rebecca. She'll send them on to Josh and Keith. And I thank you very much for being here, giving us an idea of what the logistics of whatever we're going to do is going to look like. So thank you for your really helpful ideas. As we now do on these board chair calls, we always save our last bit of time. Looks like we have over 20 minutes for Patrice to encourage conversation among board chairs and what they're doing. So Patrice, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Bob, and good morning, everyone. Interestingly enough, right before this call, Sheila McKay and I were on a meeting with representatives from the School Transportation Association in Connecticut, as well as the school business officials and superintendents. The transportation providers had a whole host of issues that they identified relative to how we could possibly open schools under the current social distancing guidelines and bus seating configurations. Of course, as the board chairs on this call know, this has been an issue on your minds. We assured them that you realize that as board chairs that there's not a second fleet of buses and a second cadre of drivers that we can just tap into. There are obviously also concerns that our Department of Motor Vehicles has been closed for 3 months, so it has been impossible to license new drivers or get the background checks done on them. So all those same challenges are shared by everyone that is trying to do their best to get kids back to school. And I think the consensus is, unless some of those guidelines change, particularly with respect to the transportation piece, it's just going to be impossible to get kids into classrooms. So having said that, let's open it up for board chairs for your questions, concerns. If you have any additional burning questions for our presenters, we can certainly take those as well, because I see they're both have remained with us.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
One of the presenters mentioned, and that also I was just kind of wondering this myself, probably you don't know the answer, but do we think there's a chance that if the numbers in Connecticut stay as low as they are now or continue to go even down, that we may not have to do social distancing? We may just have to do the masks and the cleaning and the temperature monitoring, but we can all go to school. Does anybody think that's reasonably likely?
Go ahead, Keith.
I think that's a reality, because my son's in North Carolina at NC State right now. He's out. There's nobody wearing masks. They're not social distancing. They're at restaurants. They're at bars. The school is opening. The high schools are already starting their summer practices for fall sports. They are taking some measures with masks. Helmets have a plastic liner, but they are all in, all on, all up, all going. And, so I do think as we've seen the changes, it is a varied change, but it is moving in one direction for sure. I do see that as a reality and a possibility that a lot of these things, as long as we're wearing a mask and you don't have a temperature, I have a feeling that this 6-foot distancing might not even be an issue.
And I think the real issue is it will depend upon what we see in terms of the health data. If there are spikes, our governor has been clear that he will reimpose restrictions. But right now, it's definitely true that certainly in Connecticut, we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, we were in Massachusetts, we were at 90% or 95% traffic decrease for the last 3 months. So we're just getting out of phase 1 and just got into phase 2, where we just opened restaurants on Tuesday. So as we go through these phases and spikes don't happen, 100% agree with Keith. With that said, I would definitely want to make sure you have that contingency plan for a second wave that could happen in November, December, January, and be prepared. One of the most amazing things was the resilience and the hard work and the ability to put things together in a short amount of time. Like, write a book about how you went from full population schools to distance learning in 72 hours. May 13th to May 6th, March 13th to March 16th. It was a quick shift and a quick pivot. It was amazing work and highly stressful. And you guys, I mean, I look at it and I can't believe it. But in an effort to prevent that from being so stressful and difficult, making sure that you have those contingency plans. And hey, this might happen for something else down the road. We know we can do it now. How do we better it, and how do we have it in our back pocket should we need to put it to work?
Right. That's a great point, Josh. And while no one really has much time to reflect now, taking the time to see what worked when you pivoted and what didn't work, and how you can put safeguards in place so that if you have to do this again, make a quick switch, that you're better able to do that. I did see a question in the chat that we are aware that superintendents were called to an emergency meeting with the commissioner at 10:30 this morning. We don't know what the content of that was, but if and when we find out, we'll be sure and let you know. Other questions, comments, or successes of the week?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Daryl.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I may have missed this, so if I did, then forgive me. But I know I heard extensive discussion about the sanitation or cleansing of school systems, and it just led me to think about the obvious, right? How do we sanitize or cleanse the buses, and whose responsibility is it? I mean, granted, it's got to be the schools as well as the busing contractor. We have to share some responsibility in both making sure that there is a plan, and one, making sure that the plan is enforced. But what's the thinking on sanitation of busing? And again, forgive me if I missed the conversation earlier.
Keith, you want to take?
Absolutely. What I would say for those of you folks who are in a contracted service, who contracted out, be heavy on them. What are you doing? What are your cleaning protocols? I want it in writing. We want to share it with our community members. We want to be able to say what you're doing, and if they have questions, they should have access to you. We want to make sure that we're transparent, we're available. Those folks who are doing your own busing, if I was in my last district, I would have already thoroughly cleaned and disinfected all my buses. I would have applied my antimicrobial coating. And then I would also offer the drivers or whoever's going to be doing the daily cleaning, Oxivir wipes, which have a 1-minute dwell time, and just continue with a normal cleaning before, after, because let's face it, for about, I think it's 71% was the number I knew last, that that's the first and last thing our students touch is a bus. So it's very important to put into that puzzle. There are some great products out there that can help you maintain a very clean environment. And I'll share some of those things too, but you really need to make sure you have just like with your school buildings, written document, the expectations, the protocol, and share the heck out of it, folks. Just throw it right out there. So.
Yeah, and I would put the emphasis too to make sure that you know in all those protocols, to make sure that you're having the conversation. Your kids, once they get off the bus and into your school, you have a pretty good control, even for the little ones, making sure that they're washing their hands, keeping clean, and you know your environment. The environment you don't know is what they're coming from onto the bus. So making sure that dropping them off, between dropping the kids off at the school and picking them up to bring them home, that there's a heavy emphasis on sanitizing, cleaning, disinfecting, and making sure that it's ready and utilizing the products and solutions that Keith has. But again, 71% of you are outsourcing your buses. So you got to start, we need to lean on them. I understand a lot of them are stressed out. My community, they're having some challenges getting a hold of the bus provider. And I think it's a lot because I think that they're getting hammered with people wanting to get their contracts cut down for money, and they don't want to talk about it. But this is definitely a conversation piece you want to be a part of.
And the big piece I see is that what used to be cleaned at the end of the week, now you're going to need to clean after the first run and after the second run.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So now you're going from once a week to twice a day, and that's what everyone's trying to juggle and swallow. So
yeah, and this is the biggest thing I will tell you is document. What we found, we're a software company, and this isn't a plug for me. This is just something that you need to be aware of. And this is an example. In the country, we have 1,600 school districts that have after-hours use of buildings calendar systems with us. Currently in our system, there's over 6 million events that are opened, meaning that there's 6 million events that are taking place in public schools in the country between March 16th and September 1st. There isn't a single event that's going to take place. You want to be able to make sure that you're documenting and your accuracy, and you're making sure that you're coding everything associated with COVID. And when you're doing these practices, if it's an outsourced bus, make sure that they're documenting every time that they're cleaning, making sure that they're putting what they did. Because when these kids get back to school, if there is an outbreak, if there is a challenge, you want to make sure that you did everything that you were supposed to do, everything that was required, and everything in your power to make sure that you minimize impact of positive cases that could arise.
So here's what's going to be your facilities department's new best friend. This is an ATP meter. So after your protocols are in place and you're feeling pretty good about what's going on, I take this around the districts and I swab test surfaces. Can be bathroom handles, can be door handles, can be a student's desk, can be a handrail, can be a cafeteria table. And it gives you a reading of what's on that surface. And there's certain levels, numbers that are given that show you what is clean, what is not clean, what is a hazard, what is a disaster. So this is a way to quantify all of the things that we're putting in place. So this is going to be a very good measure that most of your folks are going to need to take on. So
what's that called?
it's an ATP meter. I'm not a doctor, even though I slept with a Holiday Inn Express, but it's a long name, but ATP. This is a Hygiena unit, very good unit. You've got the swab thing here. This is what you put in. Very, very easy system. If you really want to know what's on your surface, you can send that out and get a further study. It just tells you really how effective your staff is cleaning and what's on the surface. Very, very helpful tool to support the things that you're implementing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the information. I will take that back to my superintendent.
And then we have a particulate meter that takes air samples. It shows how many particulates are in the air as well.
Wow. And I just want to emphasize that that's a tool that your school facilities staff will need. That's not what school board members are going to be using to go around and check on the building.
And every board has that member too.
Yeah, some have more than one, we found out.
Patrice, I have a question.
Go ahead, Liz.
Hi, this has been exceptionally informative. Thank you all very much. I had a question in terms of the length of the school day. It seems to me that with these types of protocols in place, we're going to have to think about the length of the school day. I mean, even getting on and off a bus seems like it's going to be taking more time. Entering a school building is going to take more time. Have your districts thought about this, or we're just going to have a shortened school day?
If you're asking me, we're looking at many options, Liz. We're looking at a staggered schedule where kids will come for half the day and then go home and then do the rest of their day remotely. The other half will come in for the second half. So you can obviously teach more kids with one person via a computer than you can physically in the classroom, but trying to maintain that physical presentation and the online presentation. All those things are being considered. They're talking about a 6-day schedule. They're talking about not breaking. They're, being home remotely during the breaks to continue learning so they can shorten the school year and shorten the school day. All great questions, none of which I have answers for. But I can just tell you the considerations that are being thrown around at this time.
Yeah, one of the considerations, now I haven't heard a lot about the extending or shrinking the number of hours that class will be in session. One of the big things that you really want to put front and center is your after hours use of buildings. So if anybody can tell me how many events you have in your district in a year, raise your hand.
Right.
So if you take the number of now here's a very simple formula. If you take the number of students that you have, so if you have 1,000 students, you multiply that times 1. That's the number of events, after hours events, for-profit, nonprofit, revenue generating, non-revenue generating, people that come from outside of the education timeline that come and access your buildings. It puts an incredible stress on your custodial and facility staff before COVID. After COVID, with all of these protocols that are going to be in place, all these added cleaning measures, all of this added chemical that you're going to need to use, you're not going to be able to get that space flipped and turned around when you have a pickleball tournament at 6 o'clock and you have parents against destructive decisions at 8 o'clock and you have all these things going on. You're going to want to take a really strong, hard look at how you're going to open your school buildings up. And I would say absolutely want to have a soft launch for students first, and let the community know, hey, we want to host your basketball tournament, your bake sale, and all that other stuff. But we really need to get a handle on how we're going to do this, because the most pressing and important thing is that this school is healthy and clean for our kids on school days. So that might just be having events on Saturdays and Sundays, which, by the way, isn't the busiest days for events. It's actually Wednesday and Thursday in the state of Connecticut. You have more events after hours Wednesday and Thursday and Saturday and Sunday. So if you want any of that data or information, I'm happy to help you with that. But that's one of the things, and the biggest thing you got to make sure that I know you're all doing this. Make sure to thank those custodians and facility staff, because they have done the most amazing job the last 3 months that I have ever seen in my career, from delivering Chromebooks and delivering meals to people to students in need, to making sure that those buildings are taken care of, like Keith's talking about his team doing. They're, even if they're working from home, they've had some struggles that they're running thin, and they're just beginning, because this is a very fluid situation.
So Liz, maybe a little help to answer your question real quick is that all 107 of our staff started back to work full time last week. So we're back. I think we're the guinea pigs. It's okay. We'll take it. We're here anyways. What I'm doing is working with building administration right now as they're establishing their schedules. We will fill in the gaps where, if that class is done, as long as I have 15 minutes, if you give me 15 minutes, I can effectively have someone assigned to that classroom to effectively disinfect it, and you can start another class if you give me that 15-minute window. So we're waiting for their master schedules, and then we're going to fill in the gaps based on what their needs are.
Terrific. I think I want to point out for all of us in Connecticut that are frustrated with the lack of certainty, it's clear from Keith's comments a few minutes ago, this is not limited to Connecticut. There's just as much uncertainty in New York and everywhere else, and we're all just going to have to do our best to manage within that, and to realize that there will be risk, and our big part of our job at this point is to mitigate those risks. Other questions, comments? As we get near the end, I really would love to end on a positive note. And I saw that Erica had posted that Clinton held a conversation.
Looked like someone was waving.
Whoever is waving, speak. I can't see all of you on my iPad, so.
Oh, okay. It's John Prince.
Hi, John.
Thank you very much. Hi. So I noticed early on, Keith, you sound like a superstar in the acquisition field in terms of getting PPE. Is that the kind of thing that a district might be able to get in touch with you about to sort of manage their needs?
Absolutely. Josh and I have already done a similar presentation with your Connecticut Superintendents of Buildings and Grounds Association. My direct cell number and my email was shared. I'm like Josh said,
Got it.
I'm here doing what I do. If I can throw you a contact who I know, like I said, I got almost 300,000 masks delivered the other day, and I ordered them 2 days prior. I'm not having an issue getting PPE.
Yeah.
I would be happy to leverage my resources to help anyone out who's in need.
Yeah, and
Appreciate it.
I put my email and direct phone numbers in the chat, and Rebecca, please feel free to give that to everybody. That's my personal cell phone. It's on 24/7. Most of the guys I know and love, like Keith, are up at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. Tell them to call me anytime with anything they need.
Be careful what you
That's
wish
very
for.
helpful. Thank you.
I've been doing it a long time. My beard's growing just fine, waiting for the phone to ring. So 3,976 minutes last month on my cell phone, not including my landline or Zoom. So this is the time we need to be around for one another.
Absolutely. Is Erica still on the line?
Yep, I'm here.
Do you want to just help us conclude by sharing a little bit about your graduation yesterday?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So our plan was actually very similar to when the commissioner sent out his recommendations to the districts, his sample number 1, example number 1, and ours was very similar to that. So what we did is we had we designed what we called the Morgan Way, which is our school is called the Morgan School. So we designed the Morgan Way, and it was really kind of based on the idea of waiting in line at Disney World, that the ride is only part of the experience for waiting in line at Disney World. So there were stations set up all around our campus where there were certain iconic elements of our graduation that the graduates and their immediate families would come in their car. We scheduled 10 per 30 minutes, and they would come onto campus. They would travel the Morgan Way in their car, so there was no concern about social distancing or anything like that. Once they got around to the back of the school, we have an outdoor classroom. So we had a stage set up with a photographer and our assistant principal reading out their names, and they would just the graduate would exit the car. They would take a diploma cover, cross up onto the stage, have their name read, cross up onto the stage, have their picture taken, and it was myself and our superintendent and assistant superintendent and school principal were there to cheer for the kids, and the families could take their own pictures from the car. Honestly, the way it's laid out, they were closer being in the car than they would have been if we had had an audience, because it was probably only about 10-15 feet away from where the kids were having their moment. And then they got back in their car and left the campus after getting swag bags and stuff like that. But then what made it really cool is we partnered with our PTA, our some local merchants and businesses and things like that. So once the kids left the school, they drove down the street. We have a Cold Stone Creamery there. Cold Stone had made up little sundaes to honor the graduates that they could take with them. One of the streets in town had completely decorated. We called it a blue out because our colors are blue and white. So the entire street was decked out in blue, and the residents stayed there all day. I mean, we were, the last graduate I think crossed the stage right around 7 o'clock at night, and people were out on the street all day to celebrate the graduates. So we've been getting a lot of feedback about how we took a really terrible situation for a class that we actually had suffered a pretty substantial tragedy in November. So this is a class that had really kind of endured a lot over the school year. But our community really felt that we had embraced, their accomplishments and what they had endured, and really were able to give them something meaningful and special and memorable at a time when none of those things seemed at all possible.
That's terrific. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's really important in these very challenging times that we remember that there are some real successes that have supported students, and in some communities, perhaps some new traditions that will develop out of this. And everyone will certainly remember that they started with the class of 2020.
That's kind of the joke, because we're I mean, we were very happy to do all of this, but in the back of our mind, we're kind of thinking like, oh my gosh, what does this mean going forward?
Yeah.
Like, what are we putting ourselves into in
Right.
terms of expectations going forward?
Well, thank you very much. And a special thank you to Keith and Josh for being with us this morning. Remember that not only do we have our webinar on Friday, but next Thursday, board chair check-in at 11 a.m., we'll have Commissioner Cardona with us. We wish you a safe and healthy week, and we'll please be in touch in the meantime with anything we can assist you with. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Keith. Thanks, Josh.
Bye-bye.